your answer. So again, the real reason I built this engine stand is I wanted to understand how to hook up the starting circuit, the lighting circuit, the gauges. But doing that, I've learned how to troubleshoot the spark. And there's two ways really. I mean, you see people pull the spark plug off and they put something in there and see if it's a spark. But I would say start with the wire going to the coil. Again, this is on the old cars. If there isn't power going to your distributor, you're never going to have spark. So, I mean, you could check the plug, but if the plug, then check here. If that doesn't have 12 volts, you'll never get spark. This video is about, I bought a 64 Galaxie. It turns out the engine compression was bad. I went and found an engine on Marketplace. The engine came out of a 69 302. In between that, I built a run stand to work out kinks and for me to learn more about gaps in my knowledge because I'm from construction. I'm not a mechanic, I'm not an electrician. The issues I have right now that I'm trying to solve, when I start the motor up, it revs to 3,000. I got a carburetor from Amazon for, I think it was 90 bucks. There's no name on the carburetor, but it's supposed to replace an Autolite, I think 2100 or 2300. That's one problem. The other problem I have now is the belt squeaks like crazy. And I'm trying all kinds of different things to try to figure it out. But so far, as of now, this is later, I've tried this, changing the spacer distance a little bit, maybe, thinking the belt might have been out of line. Loosened the belt, I tightened the belt, I got a new belt, it won't stop. That's the second problem. The third problem is kind of a multiple problem. When I started it up, the oil pressure didn't work. The oil pressure gauge that I built in my engine stand, it wouldn't work. I solved that now, finally. The other problem the amp gauge isn't working, so I gotta solve that one. And in between all this, again, I'm doing this for fun and knowledge, and I want to put a engine in this car, but so I switched distributors from what came into 302 was it was a point-based distributor, but somebody had put, I forget what they call it, a Pentrex or whatever, a points eliminator. But I got rid of that and I put in an HEI. Again, I wanted to see if I could do it. I did it. It works. It's simple. It's just one wire. I also switched the alternator because in my Galaxie, it had a generator with an external regulator, but I don't want the external regulator. I think it's a 10SI or 10I, or they say it's one wire, but it's 3 wire. But the point is, I'm trying to get it to charge the battery. And yeah, I'm getting ready to replace the thermostat. I mean, the thermostat and the housing because this one's stripped. I just noticed this hole was either completely plugged up or almost plugged up. Gasket that came with it. Doesn't even line up. This side faces the engine block. But I was trying to get this off because this goes here. I can't even get that off. At least not until I bolt it on the engine. Anyway, so here's the water pump. And there's a little round hose that goes to here. So that was almost plugged up. Yeah, so I cleaned the holes out so they matched, and I'm gonna try this stuff, hope it doesn't leak. Yeah, the thing, whenever you're working around, well, maybe all holes, but it's just especially water, make sure it doesn't go all the way through. If it does, you need to put some kind of sealer on your threads. Yeah. Weird thing about this 302, I don't know about all 302s, but make sure you put this bolt into this flange and then drop it in, because you can't get the bolt in after it, you know what I mean? It hits. Yeah, that loosened it up. It must have had Loctite on it. Okay, now we'll see if this one threads in. Yeah, perfect. because this is going to be a ground, make sure not all the threads are covered. I think it's leaking from the hose. Stopped it. Yeah, I bought another carburetor off Amazon. So I got one that has electric choke. It might work, I'm not sure. What I want to know is, does it fit over this air cleaner? Perfect match. This gasket is off just a little bit. Clears that by plenty now. Hopefully it clears the hood. I'm gonna put the other carburetor on and start it up, see if it runs like garbage. Then anyway, I found some. Here we go. It's gonna have to pump some fuel in because it was empty. Stupid choke. The choke's stuck open. The one thing I realized, I think it was my last video, I bought fuses. I didn't put them in, so nothing. This is almost empty too. I mean, I'm gonna go get some fuel. We'll put fuses in. Yeah, I was gonna go to the gas station, but then I started. I never really mapped this out. I mean, I thought I had it hooked up right. So if you look at it from this side, it's this way. If you look at it from the back, it's the opposite. So I just caught something. See if I can explain this. Again, this is the first time I've done this, so it's a learning thing for me, but something is wrong here and I'm not sure what it is. Let me think about this. Okay, I got a temporary setback. I caught a problem with my wiring. So I realized that I didn't have any fuses in, so then I went to put the fuses in. But then I realized I never took the time to mark which fuse goes to which gauge. So then I drew this I might have shown it a little earlier, but this is looking at it from the front, and this is looking at it from the back. So I guess I'll just turn it all the way to the right. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do the rest of the day. I'm not going to film it. I caught it, and again, I guess that's why you need fuses. I don't know if I ever show you this. I got this watch here. This is the Apple Watch, and that's the Apple phone. So if you ever buy an Apple, if you ever decide to make videos, again, everything I do is learning experience. With the Apple Watch, there's a button right on the side here that I can, well, first of all, I can see what the camera's saying, and I can stop it and start it. And also there's a button. I'm going to turn this button on the side. It's a little wheel. Hard to reach, but anyway, without this, if I don't use this watch, again, I'm not a video maker. I'm just doing this for tired. I'm having fun. Without this watch, you forget that if you're out of where you're in the picture. So if you ever see me go like this, that's what I'm doing. So I'm going to stop it right now. So I bolted this on there so I could put it in through my table. But if you have a box, you can just lay it flat. I can't do that with this. Yeah, it's a couple days later. So I decided to put the new carb on. And I ran a hot wire to the choke, and the choke won't work. So then I realized this choke is not grounded. And once I put that rubber plate in there, it's not grounded. And so I guess if you have an isolator plate, you better make sure you have a 2-wire choke. It'll also be helpful to know which way the spring turns as it heats up. Okay, so it moves counterclockwise looking at it. It's counterclockwise. This was on there like that, and that is closed right there. So this tang should be right here. It's way down there. They might have put this on upside down, and then it won't hit the air cleaner. That's the way it should be. This thing should not be sticking up. And there's no marks on here. I gotta let it cool down. But I can tell you right now, if I flip it up and put it in that slot, so as it cools down, clockwise opens from my side. Yeah, they had it installed upside down, those idiots. When I push down on that, it's the spring inside here that's pushing it back. How did they put that thing upside down? Okay, I gotta remember this. Clockwise opens it. Call that 0. So I got it on DC voltage. Right now, the way they got the choke hooked up, it's hot all the time. But over here, where I should be on ignition, it's not hot until I turn the key. And then it becomes hot. So I need to move this wire over here. Once this heats up, it stays heated up the whole time you're running your car. It cools down, it closes. Okay, it's the next day. When I turn the power on, it pegs. So now I got to try to figure out why. I have it hooked up the way the wiring shows. None of the other ones are pegged. They're all hooked up the same. And if you watched yesterday, I don't know if I was clear, but if you remember when I tried my air cleaner, it was hitting the air cleaner. This choke was delivered upside down. Now the contact is on the bottom and it won't hit the air cleaner. Anyway, I'm gonna play with these wires and I'll let you know my results. I don't know. I gotta think about it. I just gotta experiment. Maybe I can fix it, maybe I can't. Just want to check the gauges again. I put the new carburetor on. I started it up, it fired right up. The other carburetor was junk. The choke is working, I talked about that yesterday. The RPM, I got hooked up right. The vacuum is working. The volts is working. The temperature gauge is working, but I just noticed that this gauge only goes up to 120, which is really weird. The amp gauge isn't working. And then it squeals like crazy. And it was idling at 2200. Thermostat hasn't opened because it doesn't open to 180, but I'll never know because my temperature gauge doesn't work. Let me run and see if it still squeaks. No. The other thing I thought about this not charging, maybe I need to put a ground down here. I mean, I thought it was grounding, but maybe it's not. So I'm gonna run a ground. Yeah, it's Saturday. I bought a new fan belt. It still squeaks. Just not sure what the heck it is. Okay, so I don't know if I said it. This thing revs at like 3,500. I cannot slow it down. I don't know how. I sprayed carb cleaner all around it to see if there's any vacuum leaks. No vacuum leaks. The linkage you can see right here, it's not even hitting the screw. Again, if you order something on Amazon, make sure it says Amazon guaranteed. I can just send this back, get all my money back, no problem. Again, this one was not squirting out these jets. Out this side of the jet. This one was working. That one wasn't coming out of right there. Okay, I couldn't resist. I decided to take this carburetor apart. This Autolite C90FC. It looks pretty damn simple. I don't see why I can't rebuild this. Okay, so looking at the two carburetors from the bottom, there is a cam adjustment. The throttle might have been, just that this was not adjusted right. You know, I gotta do one more test. I just can't leave. I'm gonna put some gas in here and see if this float stays up. Okay, the float floats. I'm curious what happens if I fill it too much. It's starting to drip out. See that? So it's the next week. Anyway, I took this carburetor off because it was idling at 3,000 RPM on a cold start, and I flipped it over. There's a screw right here. So I think that's fast idle right there. So anyway, I just backed it off. That closes these smaller. I'm gonna put this back. I was gonna send it back, but I think I'm gonna put it back on, see what happens. Yeah, I put the carburetor back on, but I took off the oil temperature, the oil pressure gauge, and I'm just trying to think about how to test this. So I rigged up this. So I can adjust the pressure. We know oil pressure is like, 0 to 80, let's say. So then I put this gauge on here also to see if this one was accurate. And they're about 10 degrees off. That's good enough for my test. So I have a bunch of these other ones. The thing is this gauge off or is that gauge off? Maybe it doesn't matter. But I have some other ones. So I think I'll just take the time and take this one off and put one of these on and see if that matches that. So I got the air hooked up. This one says 50. This one says 35. I don't know which one's working. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to take this off and replace it. This is 50. This is 45. So I'm going to go up to 60. That's pretty close. So I trust these two more than I trust that. I'm just thinking to myself, I got this one, I think this is a gauge, and now I'm going to try to put that on there. Now my meter says, I guess that says battery, so I guess I got to change the battery. And that's weird. Did I blow this out? Maybe this never worked. That's the problem. You don't know what works and what doesn't work. This is dead. So that's useless. So now I'm thinking I should hook this up. So that gauge, as I put pressure on here, this should change. The gauge is good. Even though it only says 60 on here, let me turn the pressure down. So the whole problem with the gauge was this all the time. That's why I built this thing. I had to figure out what was not working and what was working. So also the resistance should change, which I'm curious about. That should change. Turning the pressure down. I'm going to turn it all the way down to 0. Or as low as I can go. The lower the pressure, the lower the resistance. The higher the pressure, the higher resistance. I want to draw that, if anybody's interested, how this thing hooks up correctly. So I had it hooked up right, just did not have the right gauge, which is on and off. Okay, I'm trying to figure out my temperature gauge, and here's the apparatus I figured out. I worked out. So I got the air hose with an adjustable pressure gauge. I got the oil pressure switch on the end so I can see as I change the pressure, the oil gauge will change. And I have a resistance meter, or I have a voltmeter on resistance. As the oil pressure increases, again, as the oil pressure increases, the resistance increases, and the gauge goes up. I mean, this is probably simple, but anyway, that's what this is all about. Okay, I just figured this out, so I'm just gonna share it. We have an oil pressure gauge. So this is the back of the gauge, the front of the gauge, the engine, the sensor, the oil pressure sensor that screws into the block, and a battery. So this is the way it works. Again, I had to work this out to understand it. So the plus, again, this is the gauge that I have. It has three on three. It has 3 connections and 2 wires. So it's got a light, that's just negative and plus, it's on or off. But so the way it hooks up, again, this is the back, that's the front. The plus goes to this side of your battery. And somehow inside the gauge, it jumps across, so then the plus goes to here. In the meantime, for this loop to work, you have to have a ground your engine block is grounded. But this gauge will not work unless you run a ground. I don't think it matters where it goes, but unless the ground, so yeah, I'd say it anywhere. So the ground, unless the ground goes back to here, it won't work. Once it works, okay, this is complicated to me. So you start your car up, your car is sitting in it at 0. Again, it's different on an engine because it's either 50, 40, 30, it's not jumping around. But the way it works, it sends power through here if the oil pressure is good, let's just say that, the resistance increases and it'll be anywhere 50, 60, 70, 80, but as the resistance decreases, again, this has got a resistor inside, as the resistance decreases, the oil pressure goes down. That doesn't really matter, but in a temperature gauge, the only reason I'm saying that is in a temperature gauge, which is wired exactly the same, and then you had the needle, you know, cold, hot. Again, it's wired exactly the same. As the difference between a temperature gauge and a oil pressure gauge, as the resistance decreases, the oil gauge will go higher. Yeah, as heat rises, resistance lowers. Oil pressure gauge is exactly the opposite. Now, the problem I had on my car, let me go over this one more time. I went to the auto parts store. I said I want an oil pressure gauge. That's what I got. Well, I guess the problem is, I think in 1969 LTD engine, it did not. I think, I don't have the car. It didn't have an oil. It did not have an oil pressure gauge. It just had an idiot light. So if you have an idiot light, all you have is an on or off switch. So you cannot use this on a gauge that has a needle. It's just off or on. That's how it works. So I solved one problem. Okay, so I'm going to be switching back and forth in this video, but so here's the Autolite C. Again, this is the tag that was on here. I think it was here or here. It's a C90F. Again, this is what I found out. I don't know anything about carburetors. But if you look that number up, that's not what these are. They're like, I think they're 2100s or 2300 Autolites. So I'm going to kind of jump around here. So, this, I think I was saying earlier, this runs like junk. I can't even keep it on the car. It does not have an electric choke. So anyway, to take this off, I'm going to rebuild it. To take this off, you just take 1, 2, 3, 4 screws, and this thing right here just threads up through here. This is basically your choke linkage that opens that up. Oh, by the way, this, I can't think of the term right now, but this thing, I finally figured out what this is. This is a, I can't think of the name, a pod or something, but what it's for, you can't turn this when it's on a table because the butterfly's open. This softens, when you let out the gas, all this does is soften the blow a little bit. It just slows down a little bit. Instead of just going, whoosh, it just gives it a little bit of slowdown. That's what this thing is. I can't think of the term. But one of the things I know is wrong with this carburetor is when you push the accelerator pump, it squirts gas into both these. Again, this is a 2-barrel. It was not coming out of this side at all. This side was fine. So that meant basically it wasn't getting gas on 4 cylinders, at least on the when you push the pedal down. Which I think the way it works is it gives it a burst of gas for acceleration. But usually these carburetors work on, there's suction. The piston goes down, it pulls gas through. So the accelerator pump is really just when you accelerate. And I don't know if it keeps flowing gas as it's held down, but it definitely pumps out some. The float. I decided to check the float. So I just poured some gas in here. And the float came up. Just like I just did it right here. And so the float is good. It doesn't have any leaks. If it had leaks, it would fill it with gas and it would sink. But that also made me wonder, you hear about the choke isn't working. The gas just keeps pouring in. It floods, if the float isn't working, it'll just keep flowing in and it'll dump down into the manifold. So I put enough gas to get the float all the way up. Then I decided I want to see what happens if I pour more, beyond where the float is all the way up. So when it started to fill up, it did start flooding. You could actually see it. Maybe I have a video of that. You can see it flooding down into the intake manifold. So I'm going to step away from this for now. But I did get a rebuild kit. I got this from Napa. And it doesn't really, I haven't opened it yet. We'll do that later. But I think it's the 2100 and the 2300. In these line of carburetors, there's like a list this long. But this is the kit. And it's called, for a 69 LTD 302 and other carburetors, and other Autolite carburetors that look like this. 15369D. And I got it from Napa. I could have bought this off Amazon. It was a little bit more expensive, and I was going to be driving by O'Reilly's, and I think it was like $29. So that's later. Also, I watched a video about if you can't fix your fan belt. They say put a silicone lubricant on your pulleys in your belt. So we're going to be seeing if that works. And I'm going to rebuild this, but first we're going to go back to... I'm going to show one more thing. I was trying to figure out how to hook up this on-off oil pressure switch, the idiot light. So right now, it's on. So if I put air pressure to it, it's going to go off. Yeah, I'm going to have to draw it. But basically, it's just an on-off switch. I didn't know that. It doesn't say it on the box, But usually, I guess, if you're going to get an oil pressure switch, you got to get one that looks kind of like that. So I spent like $30 on something that was wrong. And when you go to the auto parts store, they don't know nothing nowadays. So you turn your car on, your oil light goes on. You start the car, the pressure goes up, the light goes off. Yeah, I'm going to try to explain this. So if you have a gauge, it's wired like this. Hot to this side, hot comes out, it grounds to there. But if you don't have a gauge, hot wire goes to here. There's a red wire and a black wire to the light. It's kind of the same, but it's not. Hot wire goes to the light. It also goes to the sensor. And then the black goes to the ground. That's it. So it's either on or off. As pressure builds, it basically closes. And once it's closed, it can't get the ground, the light goes off. That's how it works. What I did find is all these fittings. Again, I've been, this is like, when I used to work in construction, we had to hook up all kinds of air stuff. Anyway, I found this box at the dump about 6 months ago. I finally got a use for it. And I got some pressure gauges that I never use. Got some pressure gauges that I never use. So I guess they should go in here. Again, I've been trying to organize the shop, and this is one more step. Not sure where to put this thing. Yeah, today's problem on the engine stand is this is the oil pressure sending unit that works with a gauge, but it won't fit in it. It hits the block right here. So I had to go to the hardware store, put this on there, this on there to get it out past the block and get it past the oil filter. Or I can't get it on, which means I had to take off the fuel pump because the fuel pump is right here and you can't get in there to tighten it. I'd be curious, did they ever have a temperature gauge on a 302? I don't know. How did they do it? Did they have a long, skinny one of these? Anyway, here's the parts. If you run into the same problem. Yeah, I just want to share one more thing. So I got my meter on ohms, tone, or continuity. And I have Teflon tape on this. Now I keep hearing that if you put Teflon tape on, you won't get a ground. So I got this on the sensing end. So here we're going to work our way down. Good, 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 good. Anyway, I was looking at the meter while I was doing that. So watch the meter and this 8.8 or 6 thousandths, I guess. I don't know what that means really. Same. Anyway, I'm not saying that what they're saying is true, but I just proved that it will work. And the reason I'm checking this is that I don't want to put this in the engine and then it not work. So it will be grounded. Of course, nothing goes simple. These things that I had bought that fit the original don't fit that. Okay, so the fan belts are off. Right now I want to make sure the oil pressure works. So I put the carburetor back on. Here's the oil pressure. Turn that screw in. Got oil pressure. That's the screw right there. Sounds like it's missing. Yeah, I don't know if you could hear me, but so I got the oil pressure working. Screw on the bottom of the choke is what was adjusted to the idle. The amp gauge isn't working yet, and I'm not sure why. I want to get the fan belt squeak away somehow. So I bought the silicone fan belt dressing, and we'll try that. It's only this fan belt that's squeaking. I'm gonna hook that up and we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm gonna start it back up. And then I'll spray this and see if it works. Wire is not hooked up. So I don't get it. Why is it? So anyway, it's charging. I got the oil pressure. I've got the belt squeak to stop. Got the carburetor idle. Look at the smoke pouring out of here. Now the radiator is leaking. I mean the radiator hose. Because it's not drawing, it's not reading amps. Maybe it is working. I mean, I don't see why it wouldn't work. Because the power is going through there. It has to be working. I'm gonna get my amp meter clamp on and see what the reading is. It's on the engine block, 141. It just died, and I don't know why. I can think of is I blew a fuse. That fuse is okay. I believe this should be hot. When I turn the key on, I believe I should have 12 volts. Key's not on. I'm gonna turn the key on. So I'm getting spark to the distributor, or I'm getting power to the distributor. Just hold the throttle open a little bit. Let me choke it. What's this? No, it's not getting fuel. It's not getting fuel. Let's try one more test here. Just see if it's pumping fuel. Stop pumping fuel. It looks like there's fuel in there, but I don't know. But here's the float. Okay, well, I just figured something out about the gas tank. I just got sidetracked again, but if this thing is not turned right, your float won't work. That's what I'm talking about. The float will hit here, so the float has to be that way. Okay, I got my remote start. So just hook it up to the battery side. And this is hot coming down to the solenoid. So if you turn a key on, let's see what happens. No, I just want to do a test here. If we put it on this side, nothing. If I turn a key on, nothing. So battery side and the S terminal. Let's see if I have any suction here. I do. So there's not enough gas in here. Fuel pump is working. The weird thing is, like I said, I just put a quarter gallon in here the other day. Every time the crankshaft goes around, it sucks. So the faster you're going, the faster it's gonna suck fuel. Maybe there was some kind of a vapor lock or something, but this thing says empty. So there is this little yellow tab in here. That's the way it has to be lined up to work. If I turn it this much more, it won't be able to rise. But anyway, just for the heck of it, unhook up there one more time, and just see if some phenomenon made it not pump gas. But I think it's empty. There's your answer. So again, the real reason I built this engine stand is I wanted to understand how to hook up the starting circuit, the lighting circuit, the gauges. But doing that, I've learned how to troubleshoot the spark. And there's two ways really. I mean, you see people pull the spark plug off and they put something in there and see if it's a spark. But I would say start with the wire going to the coil. Again, this is on the old cars. If there isn't power going to your distributor, you're never going to have spark. So, I mean, you could check the plug, but if the plug, then check here. If that doesn't have 12 volts, you'll never get spark. But anyway, I think we diagnosed it, a simple diagnosis, not for me because I'm not a mechanic. It's out of fuel. The other thing that bothers me is this temperature gauge. It works, but it only goes up to 120. Who sells temperature gauges that only go up to 120? So I don't want to overheat this engine, and I want to know if my thermostat's working. I need to, before I run this a long time, I need to make sure that I have some way of reading the temperature. I mean, I got all the gauges working. The amp gauge, I think, like I said, I think the amp gauge is working, but I don't have any amperage draw. So if you build an engine stand, I put fuses on everything. So the first thing, again, I'm just kind of going through my mind how I did this. I checked the fuse. The fuse was good that went to the solenoid. We checked for voltage. There was voltage here. I didn't pull a spark plug because first I checked fuel. Well, fuel was good. I mean, fuel was not sucking, but the fuel pump was sucking. So everything's fused, everything. It's definitely not pulling 15. I could keep going lower. I think I had a 5 in there and it tripped. Yeah, for anybody that watches my videos, I'm 69. I'm retired. I'm looking for things to do. So this video really is about troubleshooting, building a run stand, and at the same time, trying to get an engine running. So the issues I ran into is carburation, spark, gauges, fuses, fan belt, fuel pump, how to jump start it with how to jump start a car if you're under the hood, how to check fuses. But the real good one about this video that I did not know at all, this carburetor came from Amazon. When I put this carburetor on, it went up to 3,000 RPM. I could not figure out how to lower the RPM. Usually there's a screw over here. I mean, there is, but there's no adjustment. It's not even touching the lever that stops it from going lower, if that makes sense, or going higher. So I got everything working. Everything's working now. At the end, I'm gonna run out of fuel, and I'm gonna try to figure out why is this engine not starting. And that's the end of the video. So it might be boring, but if you're into like minor troubleshooting an old engine, I had to do it. I had to troubleshoot the gauges, the carburetor, the fuel pump, the alternator. It's fun. It's interesting. Yeah, there's one more trick I learned doing this that I didn't know. Again, I'm carpenter. I don't know nothing about this stuff. I thought I had to ground this choke because it's sitting on a plastic spacer. I did not see any way that this choke could be grounded. I even had a ground hooked up, but when I put the carburetor back on, the choke opened, which means it was grounded. So here's the trick I learned, which is very simple, but it never occurred to me. Usually when I check something, I go like negative to power. And if it's got voltage, okay, but this is a trick that I just learned. Just put it on the speaker continuity. Is this choke grounded? So I'm just gonna go from ground. Can you hear that? It's grounded. So how is it grounding? It's grounding through the bolts that go into the manifold. Anyway, I didn't even think of that. But anyways, it's a good trick. You can check almost everything. It's almost like checking for voltage. I did have a little fuel left. Let's see if it starts. Not very much. Let's see. And then I'm done. It's gonna have to pump up first.